Okay, we'll go ahead and get going. There are still efforts underway to troubleshoot the YouTube stream, and so probably some of you will get text messages saying that there are issues. And just so everyone knows, we are recording this work session, and it will be available for the public to listen to. So just wanted to let everyone know. I now call to order this work session of the Anchorage Assembly regarding AO 2023-38, updating the Municipal Health and Safety Program. It is Thursday, March 30, 2023. We are scheduled from 2:40 until 3:40 p.m. today. It is 2:43. Thank you all very much for being here today. We will go ahead and start with Assembly member introductions for the record.
Joey Sweet.
Auditor.
Christopher Constant.
Suzanne LaFrance, and on the phone we have Mr. Peterson.
Pete Peterson.
Thank you. Mr. Soltz.
Randy Schultz here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Soltz. It's a little bit difficult to hear you, but we did hear you enough to know you're on. Thank you. And Mr. Rivera is excused. We are joined by members of the administration.
Kenneth Goldens.
Colby Hickle.
Kelly Carruthers.
There you go.
Just push it like a.
Kelly Carruthers. Melissa Ford.
Great, thank you all for joining us today for this work session. I want to note that documents are available online, muni.org/worksessions. You will find a copy of AO 2023-38, as well as the Municipality of Anchorage's Policy and Procedures 56-4 Municipal Safety Program, and the February 24, 2023 letter from the Alaska Occupational Safety and Health Enforcement Section, ACOSH. There are other related documents available online also from the March 2, 2023 work session regarding the State of Alaska Occupational Safety and Health Enforcement Section, ACOSH briefing that the Assembly received. First, a reminder to members that work sessions are for fact-finding. We don't debate in work sessions, though it's fine to talk about changes you'd like to see or proposed amendments. And then second, before we hear from members of the health and safety team and the members of the Municipal Office of Municipal Management, I just want to give a little background on why we're here and why this ordinance was submitted for introduction at the March 21 meeting. Given what we understand about the situation of the municipality with ACOSH, and you likely recall that ACOSH brought the Assembly into the conversation with the letter of February 24, again it's posted online. It's imperative that we, both branches of our local government, do everything we can to show that we're taking action to remedy the situation and ensure that the municipality is compliant with occupational safety and health rules. This is a huge team effort, and we are all working toward this end to make sure that everyone is safe and that there are no financial penalties for the municipality, for taxpayers to have to pay. Due to the history of health and safety violations in 2021, the municipality was placed in the Severe Violator Enforcement Program, SVEP. A year ago, the municipality entered into an informal settlement agreement with ACOSH, which included reduction of fines if the municipality met the terms of the agreement. However, it has been a full year and the terms have not been fully met. Hence, ACOSH sent a letter to the Assembly and the Mayor on February 24. The total financial exposure is significant. It could be up to $12 million. I am optimistic it will not be. However, it's important to keep that in mind. Since receiving the letter from ACOSH, the Assembly held a work session on March 2, and thanks to members of the administration for participating in that work session. Assembly leadership has met with ACOSH twice. ACOSH invited members of the administration and the Assembly to meet, And in that first meeting, it was the vice chair, Ms. Carruthers, and I. The second meeting was yesterday. It included Ms. Carruthers, Ms. Hickle, the acting muni attorney, Ms. Helzer, also legislative counsel Matthew Hurt, who worked with me to draft the ordinance. And then also Chris and I, or the vice chair and I, were at the meeting. It was a very productive conversation. And Ms. Carruthers and Ms. Hickle can speak to what's been done to bring the municipality to compliance, as well as the administration's intent to bring another phase 2 contract forward for a health and safety consultant. You all may recall that the Assembly approved AM 109-2023. It's posted on that March 2, 2023 work session page. That was February 14 at a special meeting, and that was for a $14,000 not to exceed contract award to Beacon for a month of consulting services. However, before we hear from the Health and Safety Director, I want to just do a quick overview of the AO, and then I'll turn it over to you all. I'm hoping we can hold off on discussion of specifics on the AO itself until we hear more about the Community Safety Program, but I do just want to give a quick overview. This ordinance is co-sponsored actually by the Vice Chair, so Mr. Hurt will add him as a sponsor. It's a starting point for the conversation about the community's health and safety program. It's important that we hear from the subject matter experts and integrate the feedback and professional expertise into that. Again, it's a starting point. And while it's on the agenda for public hearing April 11, those of you who are familiar with how the Assembly's business know that doesn't mean we necessarily take action on that date. And again, the intent is to come up with something that will help the municipality be a safer workplace and reduce that risk of financial penalties. So I expect there will be amendments and possibly an S version. So just to go over a couple things here, the whereas provides some history. One whereas that will need to be added will be somewhere between lines 33 and 35 on page 1, which is a reference to the policy and procedure 56-4, which I did not have access to and frankly didn't think to include, so we'll include that there. I want to note that there is a point of conversation, will be on page 4 at the bottom, under A4, and that pertains to department safety officers reporting to both the Director of Health and Safety as well as the Director of their respective departments. I just want to point that out because I recognize that this will be an area of discussion. And then the third point, and there are just 4 things I just want to highlight, is on page 6 at the top, refusal to comply with the workplace health and safety program. It proposes fines for refusing to comply with the workplace health and safety program, and I know some people are like, wow, that's pretty intense. And the reason for that is, one, taxpayers pay the cost either through fines or workers' compensation claims, and 2, the municipality has an obligation to ensure that the municipality is a safe place to work. And then the last point I want to bring up, and again, I'm just highlighting these to let folks know before we step back and have that general conversation, that there are specific areas that I anticipate, maybe some others, for conversation. The 4th is page 3 at the bottom, 3.30.1610, Workplace Health and Safety Program. All municipal employees, including those employed by a municipal authority or utility. There are some questions concerning utilities and enterprises, as as those organizations have their own health and safety programs, and so what is the interface with that umbrella program of health and safety at the municipality? And of course, one of the issues, and this may come up, is that I believe ACOSH views the municipality as a whole, and that every facility has the potential to be a multiplier effect when it comes to citations. And so one citation here can be viewed, if I understand correctly, as a repeat offense if it's at another municipal facility, whether that's an enterprise or utility, and then the amount goes way up. So just flagging those 4 areas. And with that, we'd like to turn to members of the team here. And I'm not sure if Mr. Kohlhaas or Ms. Hickel, you wanted to start off with any comments, or if we'll just go straight into some questions.
I think you had envisioned, Madam Chair, that maybe Kelly or others would give a few comments on kind of how this safety program is structured. I have a few things I'd like to comment on. I can do it in either order before we get to questions, if that's okay.
Okay, if you have comments related to the ordinance, maybe we can hold
Okay.
on those, and then we'll start with a little bit of general information. And I know some of the questions, Ms. Carruthers, have to do with, what has the safety director been doing since, the informal settlement agreement and subsequent actions have happened, and some specific questions as well about what kinds of authority your group has as far as being able to stop work or being notified of accidents and those sorts of things. So if you want to just give, and we have less than an hour, so we'll probably have to keep it at a somewhat summary level. And if members have questions or want more information, I'll just manage the queue here. Thanks.
Thank you for that, I appreciate it. So the first question that you had was, what have we been doing since all this occurred? I was hired May 31st, hit the ground running. So, and I learned really fast of the SBEP program that we were placed into with ACOSH. Very familiar with ACOSH and the rules and regulations with ACOSH. So the first thing I did was pull the records to see what were the violations and what brought us into the SBEP program. My next step was to decide to see who was the safety representatives for the departments, who was actually managers and coordinators, and what was their skill sets behind that. I found out that all the departments put up a good person, some supervisors, 10% of their jobs are safety, and then I identified 4 safety professionals that were actual managers within the MOA, and that was the Port of Anchorage, Solid Waste Division, Public Works Division, and AWU, Anchorage Waste and Water Utility. And with that, I set up a meeting to discuss everything that has occurred in the past and to see what the safety professionals were doing across the MOA to make sure that we didn't fall back into compliance issues and or if they've identified and began training. Then I went ahead and looked into what training programs were available to the MOA, what safety documentation, I'm saying software, to track injuries and accidents and accident investigations. Then I identified some of the programs that could be upgraded and updated, and then I started going out to the most enforced departments, which would have been transit, public transit, and then public works. And I was seeing who they were, what they'd done, and I performed detailed, and I utilized the method from ACOSH Consultation Services when I used to work there, where we take pictures, identify the hazards, and put the standard of violation. And then I distributed that to the director and the supervisors, and then offered the fixes and how we fix and how we have to train and move forward. And then I branched out to, I would say, about 17 other departments. And then I circled back around to the departments that have coordinators, safety coordinators, which I'd say public, or Parks and Recs. Transit was also one of them, that they didn't have formal training, the safety professional or safety coordinator representative, and I began training them to the standards and what it meant and why we needed certain training throughout the MOA. And then I proceeded to address the accidents and injuries in the MOA, and that was with risk, or through risk department. And we identified some gaps, and then we I realized in reading the policies and procedures, the 56-4 for the MOA, how can I put this? What we needed to be doing in accordance with that policy, because it was the only policy that I could identify in the MOA. And in part of this policy, it had stated that the departments would have their own site-specific plans. It's kind of unusual to see, but I can understand why they did that. And then I proceeded to go out to the departments and review or request their plans and see what may have been outdated, that needed updated. And if it was outdated, so was their training. So there was, a few parts to that you had to do. And in the meantime, continue training the safety professional in that department of compliance and reviewing programs, I would say like permit required confined space, respiratory protection, bloodborne pathogens, care and conservation. So anything that related to a requirement for OSHA, and taught them how to do assessments in their workplace. I can honestly say that it's come a long way from where we were, and departments are learning how to do that detailed inspection. And then our next step here is actually revamping a training system and going to the OSHA 30 hour for all of our supervisors as they should be trained, and letting them understand what a job hazard analysis is, because it's responsibility of supervisors. And we have begun doing that as well. We've also offered and had training to that for the supervisors. We're getting ready to do another round of that training to make sure that the supervisors are on the same page with their safety managers and safety representatives. It's a work in progress, so it's a lot of work.
So I want to note for the record, we've been joined by Acting Municipal Attorney Ms. Helzer. And then also, Ms. Carruthers, would you, and I'm so sorry, Ms. Ford, if you could both state your titles as well and like your role.
Okay. I'm the Health and Safety Director for the MOA.
I'm a Human Resources Senior Specialist.
Thank you. And I guess too, one of the questions that has come up is, can the municipality meet the deadline that was stated, 30-day deadline from that February 24 letter, which I think is next week, in terms of, and I know lots of progress has been made in addressing those gaps. Where are we with that?
So just a little background, when the letter was received by the MOA, I think there were several people, including myself, that was blindsided by the citations that were still outstanding, because that was addressed when I was first hired, and I didn't get the information, and so it was a surprise that those citations were still outstanding. I have moved since then to work with the two departments where the citations are unabated. I actually, with a few of the safety managers, got on board together, working together very long hours to make sure that we're abated. We have, the only thing we are left is one of the citations regarding the OSHA logs. We're currently working on those, should have it up tomorrow. So yes, I have a scheduled date with the ACOSH chiefs to turn in the abated, and those should be completely abated.
Great, thanks. And my sense from that meeting yesterday, it was very productive, and a lot of work is underway, a lot of work has been done. So thanks for that update. Could you talk a little bit, just some general questions about the program? What qualifications do the safety representatives have at the Muni?
So what I generally look for a qualified safety person is anywhere between 5 to 10 years of safety, working in process or high hazard industry where they address safety issues or hazards in their workforce. Education is very good to go in line with that experience. If they have certifications through safety, whether it would be a train-the-trainer OSHA 30-hour, which is really good for your supervisors that they have that certification for OSHA. That tells you that they understand what the standards are and or how to apply those standards. Again, I can't give up on education because that's always one, but the boots on the ground experience behind them and understanding how ACOSH works or OSHA works and how to enforce those standards in an organization is very important.
And then as Health and Safety Director, do you have the tools or the structure that you need to carry out your job, as well as, do the health and safety employees as well? And we're gonna talk about the ordinance, but as we learn more about the current safety program and plans for enhancing it, I think it's helpful to understand, what is needed or what is missing in the current environment.
So the answer to your question is a very simple one, no. We do not have the tools necessary to operate a full safety program throughout the MOA.
Can you speak to what's needed? And if there are members who have questions too at this point,
Okay.
let me know if you need it in the queue.
So there is no software program. Everything is being handled manually. And when I say handled manually is when OSHA accidents or injuries come in, it's very sporadic. I have been working with risk, and they do identify when injuries reports are processed. We have no tracking system for the type of training. Every department is doing their own thing, and there's no way to see what type of training they're doing, which has led me to move to a universal training program with a standardized training format and training information. So we don't have that in place yet, but I have met with the safety group. We're on a concert of having that and working where we've reached out to software companies, safety management system companies, and have already begun reviewing a safety management system for all departments to be able to use, the safety personnel, so they can track their training. That can actually could be able to slide in and/or Kobe and see the instant compliance, a department is compliant or non-compliant with the compliance tools of a safety management system, which is really good. We should have that on board, and I'm working towards that.
Do safety representatives perform accident investigations? Do they receive follow-up information on restrictions for work? Do they, or you have the ability to have stop work authority, or maybe even, I don't know if that's something you want to explain, trying to get a sense of, what authorities that you and the team have.
That answer would be no. We do not have authority for accident, injuries, investigations, or follow-up. Not one safety manager nor myself. At this time, we do not.
Who does? Who has that authority?
The risk department has taken, or in the policy, it's been kind of transferred over to risk somewhere before my time. And I believe they leave that to the supervisors to do accident reports, but no retraining.
And I know that there has been a lot of outreach and training and work. I mean, do you feel like the supervisors are taking responsibility for that piece of it, for your department safety program? I know we're having this general conversation about how to elevate the safety and health program here at the municipality.
There are pockets throughout the MOA where supervisors are very gung-ho and have been very helpful in wanting to comply and asking and reaching back for information. And then there are other pockets in the MOA that do not. And I have to say that involves the union with the employees. The supervisors in the union, so I don't deal with that. That's an HR.
Okay. So if there are safety issues that involve union employees, then you would make a referral to the HR department for assistance? Or you don't?
I don't. That would
That
be
would
the
be-
supervisor.
Okay, so that's handled through the chain of command of the employee.
Yes, the safety personnel generally, some will notify safety and others don't. So it's not universal and it's not consistent.
Go ahead, Mr. Constant.
So in your experience, in the ideal, what would it be?
It would be that if an employee is injured, immediately they contact the supervisor, and the supervisor should immediately contact the safety personnel for that department, and or myself if they couldn't get a hold of that safety professional. and an investigation, they should go out and take care of the employee, of course. And the safety supervisor, or safety managers are let it out to either a 5 why system as to who, what, when, and where, how it happened, what was the cause, without hindering the employee or making the employee feel blamed, because that's not the object of safety at all. It's to support our system and to make sure that we don't do it again, or did we do something wrong, and could we help that employee do something better in the workplace where they're not injured.
So if there's a department where there's just a whole slew of issues that are rising up, and somebody determines that operations are unsafe right now, what's the method of intervention? Is there one? Is it
Not
just the
that I'm aware of.
supervisors, if they see it and hear it, then maybe?
Hopefully. I have nothing that has shown that throughout the MOA.
So what comes to mind is, like, if you have a culture of safety, everybody is empowered, right? The whole team. I mean, any one person could say, we need to stop.
Absolutely.
And so, okay, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Constable. Go through the queue, and I do want to note that these are some long-standing issues in the municipality, and there's no finger pointing or blame going on. Again, this is an effort to support the safety program, safety and health program, and figure out what is needed to do that. So next in the queue is Mr. Cross and then Ms. Dern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, what model have we, I think if you guys would turn your mics off because I'm getting some reverb here, but what models of other cities or municipalities are we building our program off of? Where have we seen other successes so that we're not reinventing the wheel? Can you speak a little bit as to what your research has discovered and where we're getting our plan from? Thank you.
It would be based on my expertise working as an ACOSH co-show. I was federally certified as a co-show through the state of Alaska. I ran the SHARP program, which was the Safety and Health Recognition program for the state of Alaska. And the fact that I have incorporated several employers throughout the state of Alaska into that SHARP program, mainly my first achievement, which was really exciting, was the city of Kenai. And then I went out to the borough and I did the same thing. However, I didn't put them in SHARP, didn't have enough time. And I've done this 17 times over in my career of putting employers into the SHARP program, so I do understand what the type of model that we should have, which is really nice. I also do check back in Region 10 and other, like the state of Alaska, state of Washington, state of Oregon, and taking a look at their models of their programs. We are in the process of writing a very robust, attentive umbrella MOA plan.
Any follow-up, Mr. Cross?
No, excellent. That's fantastic to hear. I'm just, I guess, just mildly concerned with any kind of reluctance to take and put these systems in place. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Ms. Dern and then Mr. Costa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here and being so informative. We're very lucky to have your experience, and I just have a couple of questions. On AO number 86207S-1, which is noticed in section 3, it has the wording that we're looking to change. It doesn't really address reporting mechanisms. Could you talk a little bit about reporting safety concerns that an employee might have, how an employee might be able to do that without worrying about any sort of retaliation? Is there a 1-800 number? Is there any mechanism that's across the board used in the MOA? Thank you.
That was one of my first questions that I did ask and did some research on when I was hired on to the MOA. There is it's called a near miss program, which is on the safety website for the MOA, which any employee could, if they want to identify themselves, they can, or if not, they don't have to. We generally encourage to, because it is confidential. I try to maintain that confidentiality if someone is wanting or has a concern for safety. And I'll level it up, either walk out there myself if they have a concern, or I'll get a hold of the safety manager and go with them as well. Because that training element is amazing, and whatever we could do to assist the employee. The second thing I moved forward very swiftly to do in the new hire orientation, the employees are informed of who their safety representatives are. I provide them with as a fail-safe card, that if they, may not be comfortable going with their safety or their supervisor, that whatever they have to say, whether good or bad, it is confidential. And that's why I told them on their last resort, if they go through a supervisor and their safety person and they still don't have that satisfaction or need, or they have more needs, that they can level it up to me and I'll work with them independently. And of course, all employees have a right to go to ACOSH if they have a formal complaint, but I do ask that they come to me. If they never had it before, they have it now, and I'm available to anything dealing with safety and health. I think all the safety group as well.
Thank you, Mr. Constant.
Thank you. So, boy, there is a lot to this conversation. The conversation about how do we address where we are with state OSH, ACOSH, how to proceed in adopting an ordinance that establishes a more clear program and what that ordinance should deal with. And I had some people reach out to me overnight in the context of other departments, in particular the enterprise and utilities. And so where we do have a thriving culture of safety in certain areas, or maybe not, depending on who you're talking to. And so I'm wondering if we're going to pivot to the ordinance or if we're going to continue general questions, because I have some thoughts on the ordinance.
Do members have any other questions about the municipality safety program? I have some specific questions and I can send them in an email, and that has to do with just how some portions of the program are handled. So I can send them to you all, and we can go ahead and pivot to the ordinance. Do you want to kick that off, Chris?
Sure.
Mr. Constant?
Absolutely. I know probably Mr. Colhase said he had some thoughts, and I'm very much interested in hearing what the administration thinks about this. One thing that I want to do is honor, if there are places within the community where things are running well, we honor those programs and maybe build off of their success. And what I'm thinking is, in the way that this is established, it creates a unitary safety director, one line of command. And I'm interested in discussing some alternatives to that. And the one that just comes to mind, and this is just spitball or jazz, just off the top of my head, is if we do look at our enterprises and utilities somewhat differently, and OSHA doesn't, then maybe what we do is think about establishing within each of those units a functional team, and then a board-like structure of all of the lead agencies that have safety programs within that report to the director, but that also have policy-making ability to communicate and exchange what's working and what's not across the departments. So in my imagination, what that looks like is there is a safety representative for the water utility, for the electric utility, for the solid waste utility, for the port. And each of them kind of has an equal position in a conversation about how we develop our community-wide safety program, but it doesn't become so top-down that we miss the nuance of each of those programs and maybe benefit from the exchange between the departments. And so that's a long way of saying I think maybe I'm interested in looking at alternative structures that might allow for a more collaborative approach that still provides the direct chain of command that's needed to make sure everything's being done properly, so responsibility and command, but at the same time taps into the wealth of experience, doesn't dispatch with it. And so I'm not sure what that would look like. I don't know if there's a question in there, but that's where my head's at in the context of this draft as it is.
Do any of you want to comment on that, or other insight?
Go ahead, please.
When we're talking about the utilities or solid waste divisions and what I've already identified in these facilities, that there is not enough cohesion and information for safety. Recently, I identified several issues that were going on that we were hit very hard with transit and their citations. And these same citations, even though the information had gone out to different facilities, actually throughout all facilities and safety personnel, that I was saddened to see a year later that one of our divisions was still in poor shape. And if ACOSH would have walked into that division, we would have probably been hit with over in excess of 400,000, if not more, in citations. So that's just me knowing what the citations are and what I saw. But then I walk over to another division, and you see that they actually took everything with a grain of salt and implemented everything that needed to be implemented, which is really nice. We have some really golden eagles out here in the MOA. But then we still find when you have that siloed effect is still happening in the MOA, and they are still not on board with the fact that we have a huge settlement agreement. So having that consistency instead of having this division or that division because they're a utility or enterprise isn't consistent. I never, and coming from my experience, when I worked at the borough, I had solid waste division under me, I had public works under me. They had safety representatives, but they didn't have a safety manager. I was over everyone. And it was very cohesive, very unified. And when I left, I can honestly say they got off the high hazard list as something that you really want to be off of when it comes to OSHA. And it was a big feat. And everybody seemed happy. So having that unison instead of siloed effects, still whether they're utility or not, we need to be consistent. And I don't want to ever take away from the Port of Anchorage. Paul out there is great. We operate on the same wavelength and have great communication and understanding for safety. Same, I can honestly say that with solid waste as well. I have to throw them under there because they've done a really outstanding job of doing what they need to do to get compliant and stay compliant.
So, yeah, I don't know that anything you said was mutually exclusive of what I suggested as a way to organize the leadership is what I'm really thinking about. So that's an area of investigation I'd like us to look at while we have this conversation over the next few weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Do you want to go ahead, Mr. Colhase?
I do, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few comments in the interest of time. Not to rehash everything Kelly said, but I would first say, of course, like you, like everybody, I think safety is of the utmost importance. When I worked for the federal government, we did have the ability, any employee from the entry level up had the ability to stop work if they thought things were not safe. And that happened without reprisal. I think that needs to be a policy here. I do know, and I think you're all aware that, or perhaps not, that the previous municipal manager had really elevated safety as a concern, to the point that she brought in Kelly, Ms. Carruthers, based on her extensive experience with Alaska OSHA and her experience in the safety world in general. One of the things that had started and hasn't made the progress I think that anybody would want, but at least was being looked at, and we've continued to look at it, is the idea of some kind of restructure that would bring safety managers and have them report to the safety director as opposed to reporting to directors in the field. There's challenges with that because some safety folks in the field are collateral duty. They do more than one thing for the units, and there's a natural tension there. But that is something that we have, that Municipal has in particular has reinvigorated here recently. So I just wanted to mention that. We have, I don't want to take a bunch of time, we have three specific areas that we wanted to comment on, and we don't need to solve them today, but three areas with the draft ordinance, and you commented on one of them, or actually a couple of them. The first one is the dual reporting structure. I did share the AO with a number of directors, not with all of them, but with a number of them, that really with the people, the directors who have the field going employees who are probably more at risk than HR or my office sitting on the 8th floor. And one of the comments consistently that came back was how a dual reporting structure really works. You have somebody who has duties in safety and duties in mowing grass, and they're both a priority for different reasons. And one, you have two different bosses telling you to do something. So that's a concern that maybe could be addressed by this restructuring I mentioned earlier. Another concern we have, or that we identified in the discussions, and you talked about it, is the provision for fining employees. There are provisions in place and Melissa Ford is here to talk to it if folks have more questions, but there are provisions in the HR process for disciplinary action to occur. So we'd be interested, I guess, to talk more about how fining employees would work within the realm of HR policies, legal authorities, current bargaining units, things like that. And then the third comment is and I know I've talked with Ms. Carruthers about this. She has expressed concerns to me about her ability or inability to view some records that she views as important in investigating safety accidents, in improving the safety program, in responding to incidents, working with OSHA, all of that. She has expressed that there are some documents that she would need to see that she currently has not been able to see. Our comment on the ordinance is that as it's written right now, it appears, other than attorney-client documents, it appears to open everything up to viewing by the safety manager, the safety director at their sole discretion. And that encompasses personnel files, other potentially confidential things, possibly venturing into HIPAA. So we'd enjoy some more discussion about how that really works, how that fits within the realm of legal concerns, HR concerns, respecting the confidentiality expectations of employees and things like that. So those are probably the three areas where we think that additional discussion would be helpful to both sides, or both parties, I guess, not sides, we're all on the same side. Ms. Chair, you mentioned the policy and procedure, as did Ms. Carruthers. I've reviewed it several times. I pulled it out again today and looked at it, and frankly, I think it's woefully lacking. I mean, I don't think there's much there. So I think that P&P, in concert with some form of the ordinance, could really go a long way towards bolstering the safety program. And I think some of the things we've talked about could be handled in a policy and procedure as opposed to the ordinance, but I guess I would reiterate that I think the current P&P needs some work. Would you agree, Ms. Carruthers?
Absolutely.
It's been 20 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think I'll stop now. The one thing I do want to mention, and I think it was mentioned by Ms. Carruthers or you, we are actively pursuing what we would call phase 2 of the compliance contract or review of our program. So you can anticipate very likely seeing, depending on the dollar limits and whether it's sole source or not, you'll see something in front of you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Mr. Constant.
When you say phase 2, I just want to be really clear. Are you saying a new solicitation that's wide open to all comers, or phase 2 to the initial offer?
I'm just going to speak frankly. We believe that the services offered by Beacon and their subcontractor have been very valuable. It's not completely clear right now that they would be the ones, that they would have the same skill set required to do this broader unit by unit assessment of the safety program and the compliance in a detailed look at each level.
Excellent. So phase 2 does not mean amendment to the contract. It means we're looking fresh,
Correct.
Wholesale at new potential bidders.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Dern?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make sure that I understand correctly. When it says including those employed by a municipal authority or utility, I'm assuming that's all subcontractors?
Which
It's section 3, page 3.
Through the chair, I think I know what you're speaking of. And my answer is no. This would refer to municipal employees, including employees of what we call enterprise units, such as Merrifield, the port, solid waste services, Anchorage water and wastewater utility. It would not include contractors or subcontractors. If I may, there are different avenues for ensuring that contractors of the municipality comply with health and safety requirements.
Thank you. I have one follow-up question, if that's okay, Madam Chair. Sure. Okay, I just wanted to understand if there's anywhere, we're talking about federal, state, and local Army policies. Is there any place where people can look this information up? I understand robust training is fantastic, but first of all, things change. Obviously, maybe not on paper, but they do change. And so where do our employees, where are they instructed to go if they have a question? Besides maybe your office, like is there a place online that they can go and type in, fire hydrant or whatever it might be and get an answer?
Currently for the MOA, no, but if it's a safety question, any employee can go to the ACOSH website and they could, I hate the term Google, but they could Google it and look under the standards. And many actually have, which is really nice. All of the standards are listed on the OSHA website. It's osha.gov. They could go and they can look up and ask the site questions for standards and letters of interpretations for their workplace.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Just to quickly tail up on that, I think Ms. Carruthers is exactly correct. Also, she is a resource, and I think the safety organization, and this is not meant at all to detract from the people who are doing collateral duty and full-time safety duties on the units, but probably an ideal organization, not probably, an ideal organization would have those folks as subject matter expert on many of these issues as well. So we would envision that there be multiple places they could go. They could go to the policy and procedure to find references. They could go to Ms. Carruthers, and they would be able to go to the unit safety officers.
I would also like to add that even though we're not utilizing ACOSH consultation services, any employee has a right to, if they don't want to, engage in enforcement, which we encourage them not to discuss with us, but they do. ACOSH, the state of Alaska, OSHA has a division, it's called consultation services, that are open, and I'm not going to put them out there and sell them, but they can also engage with the OSHA COSHO, free of charge, and ask questions.
Thank you. Mr. Consit?
Yeah, thanks. I want to go back to this conversation that Mr. Ern brought up relating to Section 3 and question contractors versus employees. It's interesting to me now that I think about it, and maybe there's a missing piece here, maybe it's somewhere else in the code. The work site is as important as the worker or the employee. And I wonder if OSHA were to show up at Port of Alaska on a construction site for the petroleum cement terminal 1 that's already built, if they're going to look at the contractor for X company and see a violation and say, well, this is the contractor, not the muni, but it's our work site. How does that work out on the actual grounds of a department?
Through the chair to Mr. Constant, I'll let Ms. Carruthers speak if she wants to weigh in. I've had almost 30 years of experience in construction contracts, managing them. Worked for the federal government for a long time doing that, and this is always a topic of discussion. And generally, and I know in municipal, it's not, I don't think it's in code, it's in mass, the municipality of Anchorage standard specifications for construction. And in other agencies that I've worked in, same thing. It specifically places the responsibility and the onus for safety, including site control, on contractors. And it's that way on purpose. It's to avoid the liability of the municipality or any agency in being responsible for the actions or inaction of an employer, a subcontracting employer. We do, the mass, state standard specifications do require that contractors have safety plans. We don't approve those safety plans, and we purposely do not. In my previous career, we did not either, because again, once you review and approve something, you've taken on some level of liability and responsibility for the citizens, whether it's the citizens of Anchorage or the citizens of the United States if you're working for the federal government. So that's my view of that. Ms. Carruthers may have another opinion on that.
So, but the more nuanced question, let's pick it non-construction. Let's talk about Anchorage Safety Center, who is providing a direct regular service for us. And we're finding that there are issues relating to how those services are delivered in maybe an unsafe manner, according to some videos that we've seen. Do those not fall onto us and our responsibility, or is that all on them?
Anchorage Safety Center, the patrols,
The white vans and the
Yeah.
story of the person. being tossed.
I can only presume, I haven't looked at their contracts, I would presume that those contracts contain indemnification language. And that's not to say that we shouldn't have a role in ensuring that, I saw the video that people are treated humanely, that's not what I'm saying at all. But our contractors should bear responsibility for that as well. So I don't have a firm
So
answer.
then the last part to that question is, does OSHA see it the same way?
Yeah, they would be we're the host and they're the contractor responsible for their employees and what happens in their entity. However, what I have viewed since I've been here at the MOA is very positive, where if I get a complaint or a manager gets a complaint, I'll say our Easy Park, with our employees, but they run that Easy Park, contractor does. I do reach back to the director and let them know, and it's been very positive, and they've given positive feedback, thank you, and they address their issue. Just having that open communication with them is always positive, as I recommend with, if you have project managers on site with a contractor and they see something, that they have that open dialogue, but we can't dictate to a contractor how they're going to run their operations and or safety program.
Thank you.
So I have a question. I put myself in the queue. I don't see any other members right now in the queue. And the question I have, just looking at the policies and procedures, and I know there are plans to update them. For example, on page 5, we're at the bottom, it talks about the responsibilities of the safety director. And I observe in this policy and procedure that there are a number of responsibilities listed, but it's not clear to me what authority the safety director has. And so, for example, and I need to go back and do another read of this, does it also say in here that directors and employees are required to notify the safety director if there's an accident or a near miss or an injury? And it doesn't have to be answered now, because I know we're all paging through.
If I may,
Go ahead.
I don't have specifics, but on page 3, it lists the responsibilities from the mayor and the manager on down through the rank and file employee. So if those specific abilities are not in there, that would be one place to beef that up.
Okay, thanks. And I know that just from my own experience as an employee in a fairly large organization that had a very robust health and safety program, the organization didn't want to have the attention of OSHA, and certainly was motivated to ensure that the workplace was safe for a number of reasons. And the issue of, I remember too, when we wrote up incidents about safety, they were written in general terms, where you don't mention the name of the employee, and in a way that it provides enough information, at least initially, for like the safety director to have an idea of what kind of accident it was, or if it was a standard slip, trip, falls, or something else. And so I don't, again, you all are the subject matter experts on this, but clearly the intent isn't to just open up all the personnel files, but to ensure that whoever is in the director position has enough access to information, whether it's facilities or reports that show a pattern or show an area where that can be improved, or as Mr. Constant said, in terms of creating that culture of safety, which every employee needs to take responsibility for, to identify those areas where more training might be needed or more support. So when I had done some research and I went online, we don't on the assembly necessarily have access in an easy way to the same kinds of documents. Like the policy and procedure didn't come up for me, and I'm not saying that's anybody's fault, but just that this is really helpful, to have that complete view and to see what is provided to employees as well. And maybe it was provided to me and I don't remember. But anyway, I'm very interested in continuing the conversation about, how do we ensure that those individuals who are tasked with the enormous job of ensuring we're doing all those things we seek to do have the authority to do it. And that all, employees know that they can stop work or that there's not going to be any repercussion because they're partners in this too, in keeping everybody safe and again, making sure that the municipality doesn't get fined. I'm not trying to get into debate, but just as far as, that communication on where do we go next. I mean, Mr. Colhakes, is Ms. Hickel the point of contact for amendments, or is that something, or that conversation? How would you like to proceed?
Madam Chair, I think for this, if you would work with me, and
Okay.
feel free to copy Ms. Hickel and Ms. Carruthers as well. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll go to Ms. Dern. I think I mentioned too that Mr. Hurt, Legislative Council, has been drafting and on this project and is available as well to work with us and the co-sponsor on any amendments or S version and whatever we need to support the further implementation of the program. Go ahead, Ms. Dern.
Seeing that this is a 21-year-old document, I'm just wondering, is there like an industry standard in terms of how often these documents would be maybe rewritten or revised? And is there something that you might want to add into the AO that would cover that? Thank you.
I might briefly interrupt and say I made a mistake when I said 20 years old. It's actually 13 years old. So it's written backwards there, so I'm sorry I misinformed you, but still 13. Same question, I'm sure.
I would say we rewrite them every 13 years.
So most programs or policies should be reviewed annually because you have change of hands and or management and supervisors. So it's a really good idea to review and reflect and or if there's a change that needs to happen. So at least an annual review of any of your programs in health and safety should be an actual requirement. But OSHA has certain programs that are mandatory to be reviewed. So it's really nice to stay in line with what OSHA recommends through their required programs. So I love the fact of going back every year and reviewing and having your safety group do that. So.
I'm going to go to Mr. Colhakes. So did you have a comment? And then Mr. Constant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had two comments. One, somebody mentioned they didn't use the word perhaps for reprisals, and I will say that I have no tolerance for reprisals, and any reprisal against somebody reporting a safety issue would be dealt with immediately. The second thing I wanted to mention on the specifics of the draft ordinance is there's a requirement there for the safety director to perform vehicle inspections on an annual basis. I think it was annual, periodic. I talked with the Fleet Services Department. They do extensive inspections to the point of pulling tires off of vehicles at the time of an oil change to inspect brake rotors and things like that. So pretty confident that that is happening at a very, very comprehensive level now. So maybe a suggested change would be for the safety coordinator, safety director to coordinate with fleet management on monitoring or ensuring that process is followed. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thanks. My day job, our employer has a company we contract with called Relias that provides regular training on important matters relating to HIPAA and workplace safety and violence and all of the things. Our whole policy and procedure manual is uploaded into the system. And every time there's a policy update annually, you are actually tracked through the system to see that you did the training to understand or at least to have been exposed to the change in policy. And so this, 13-year-old document.
Are we still connected? Can anyone hear me?
Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear
my
you,
mic wasn't
Randy.
on.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm
Thanks.
asking about a potential evolution in methods. Do we have a plan for training using modern technologies to ensure that the entire workforce is receiving the training we intend for them to have at some level, and so that policies as they're adopted are communicated and we can get direct acknowledgement in an easy or efficient manner.
Right now, currently, the MOA has contracted with a company, was known as Vivid, but changed over to HSI for workplace safety training. It is not a real good compliant tool, but it does track all the employees of who is to receive training, whether it's egress, fire extinguisher, first aid. I don't view it as a good compliant tool because we're missing some elements, I believe, for the training. We're using it for now. We revamped it, took away 700 administrators that were in that program and assigning training all over the place down to 10 required, that OSHA we should be doing annually for the employees and the different workplace violence type policies and procedures. And we are looking in the safety software management system to where the one program we viewed, which is really good, it allows us to input the training information and be able to track that training, whether it's through OSHA, if it's machine guarding, lockout, tagout, that we have that information in there and that we can see that the employees are doing the training and assign accordingly. So we're looking.
Yeah, thanks, because that makes the world much better when you don't have to chase things. It's just based on the process. The process generated a report that you can send to OSHA when they request it.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm interested in seeing where that goes as we develop.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. I know we're at the end of our time. Mr. Colhase, when you mentioned fleet inspections, that raised a couple questions for me, and I can follow up. And questions about, does the MOA have a driver safety program? And I saw Kelly shake her head no. And just CDLs and those who hold CDLs and the operators, are they qualified for safety sensitive positions, within the municipality? And then the notion too of inspecting vehicles jogged a question for me about facility inspections and written reports, and if those are shared with you. So I'll put, again, some of those follow-up questions in an email to you all, and then we can just, share the responses with the rest of the members. I'll just pause. Does anyone, go ahead, Ms. Dern, and then we'll go to you all if you have any just final comments, and then we'll wrap up. Thanks, everybody, for going over a little bit. Go ahead, Ms. Dern.
I have a couple of questions as well from something else that I asked you before. So what I direct them to? Okay. All right, great. I'll send
Through the chair to Ms. Dern, if there are safety-related questions, please feel free to reach out directly to Ms. Carruthers.
Great.
Thank you. I don't see, go ahead, Mr. Sweet.
Just briefly, what's the latest with the fine situation? Are we still looking at the full, I think it was 627, or has that changed at all?
From what I understand, it's still the 92,000, and that is also into what we'll be spending towards a consult. They had alluded that we would be able to put that fee from the consultant towards that fine, which is really a positive thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sweet. And I don't see any other members in the queue, but I just want to give an opportunity for any of you to go ahead and leave us with some final thoughts.
Nothing too long. I just want to reiterate our commitment to safety, and I specifically you commented on it briefly, but I want to recognize that since we received the letter from OSHA, that Ms. Carruthers and Aaron Carter, who's in the room here, and the Lieber, who's in the room, and some other folks in the safety organization across the city have worked. I would guess that Kelly has put in 80 hours a week since we got that letter. So I just want to recognize that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colhase, and thank you all for your tremendous effort. Anybody else want to comment? Anything? Sure, go ahead, Ms. Seltzer.
Through the chair, I just wanted to let Assembly Council know it would be really great if we could maybe set up a meeting just to go over some of these incidentals, and I'll go ahead and schedule that. And I would encourage, any questions we could all get together before this is voted on. So it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Helzer. And I had indicated to the group earlier that if you wanted do like a small meeting with whoever, so I'm really happy to hear that we're thinking along the same lines. So thank you very much for that. Again, thank you all for being here. Really appreciate the conversation and look forward to continuing this work. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. With that, we are adjourned.